Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Social Leopards. I'm Beth. Today, I am exploring emotional healing, specifically healing after psychological abuse. As you may already be aware, this season I'm featuring the work of Substack.com creators, and today I'll be reading an article titled, What Real Healing Looks Like, Rewiring the Body After Psychological Abuse. It was written by Vera Hart, who is a psychiatrist and neuroscientist specializing in trauma recovery, narcissistic abuse, and the neurobiology of power. Be sure to check out the show notes for more details and a link to her Substack page. This is a sort of continuation from the last several episodes, which deal with emotionally induced trauma and finding ways forward. I am honored to be sharing this article with you today, and I think with that, let's just go ahead and get started. Healing is not passive light. It is a fierce, living fire cupped in your own hands. Introduction. Healing isn't what you've been told. Healing isn't a glow-up. It's not a transformation montage with a soundtrack and a sunrise. It's not becoming unbothered, or rising above it all with a mysterious smile and flawless skin. And it's definitely not learning to love the people who hurt you. That's not healing. That's performance. That's survival rebranded as enlightenment. The truth is quieter, slower, sometimes lonelier, but it's also real. I'm allowed to belong to me now. Real healing begins the moment you say to yourself, not to anyone else, just yourself, those words. That's it. That's the first door. Not forgiving the unforgivable. Not erasing your symptoms. Not becoming endlessly patient or spiritually graceful, but saying, I don't need to keep bleeding just to be good. Healing doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks like saying no without apologizing. Sometimes it looks like grieving someone who never loved you. Sometimes it looks like sitting in a room where no one understands and choosing not to explain. Healing isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And it truly begins, when you stop asking the world to validate your pain and start trusting your own nervous system when it says, this isn't safe. I want out. Step 1. Name what happened without diminishing it. This is the part most survivors were never taught. You can't heal what you keep minimizing. You can't rewire what you keep dismissing. You can't make peace with what you've never let yourself say out loud. So many survivors talk themselves out of their own truth, but others had it worse. They didn't hit me. I chose to stay. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe it was me. None of that changes the reality of harm. Your body doesn't care how polite they were. It doesn't care if they said sorry. It doesn't care whether it looked like abuse from the outside. Your nervous system doesn't rank pain by courtroom standards. It doesn't wait for proof. It responds to threat, confusion, abandonment, betrayal. If your sense of safety was broken, if your trust was violated, if your mind learned to live in survival mode, then it was abuse. If you began to question your memory, your judgment, your worth, it was harm. If love made you small, afraid, addicted, or invisible, it wasn't love. And you are allowed to say so. You are allowed to name it without softening the edges. You are allowed to say, what happened to me wasn't okay. You are allowed to stop defending your own pain. Once you do, once you stop explaining it away, minimizing it, comparing it, rationalizing it, your brain finally receives permission to heal it, not just to survive it. Because your nervous system can't rebuild while it's still being gaslit by your own thoughts. It needs you to believe it, to stand by it, to say, I saw what I saw, I felt what I felt, and I am done doubting it. That's the first crack in the wall. And through that crack, something real can begin. Step 2. Rewire what your body believes about safety. Here's the truth about trauma that most people never explain. It teaches your body to respond to danger quickly, but to recognize safety slowly. So even when someone kind enters your life, someone calm, respectful, gentle, your nervous system may not trust it. It might feel boring or guarded or even threatening. You start asking yourself, why don't I feel anything? Why do I keep pulling away? Why does peace feel so empty? But that emptiness isn't a red flag about them. It's a signal that your body doesn't recognize calm as safe yet. Because trauma doesn't just make you fear the wrong people, it makes you mistrust the right ones. When chaos has been your normal, stillness feels suspicious. Kindness feels manipulative. Quiet feels like the silence before the storm. Healing means retraining your system to recognize safety not as waiting for the other shoe to drop, but as the actual absence of shoes, of storms, of games. It means teaching your body that calm is not the void, it's the ground. True love doesn't make you shaky. It doesn't spike your adrenaline. It doesn't send you chasing closure after every conversation. True love feels like this: a peaceful lake at sunrise. No undertow, no test, no panic, just steady presence, just breath. And if your relationship feels like you're fighting waves, bracing for the next one, that might feel dramatic, addictive, even intoxicating. But it's not love. Love doesn't feel like a battlefield. Love doesn't make you hold your breath. Love doesn't need you to suffer to prove you're loyal. That calm, that boring calm, that's where your nervous system gets to rest. That's where you start to hear your own voice again. At first, it won't feel natural. You'll flinch, you'll retreat, you might sabotage. But the more time you spend in truly safe spaces, the more your body will learn, this is peace. I'm allowed to stay. You'll have to remind yourself 100 times, but every time you stay with the safety without fleeing, chasing, or proving, your brain begins to rewire, and your body begins to believe you. Step 3, learn the difference between love and a trauma bond. A trauma bond isn't just about pain. It's about intensity, the kind that spikes after withdrawal. It's the apology that comes instead of change, the tenderness that follows cruelty, the illusion of safety right after you've been hurt. It's not consistency that hooks you, it's the relief. That powerful, temporary moment when the chaos stops and they pull you close again. That hit of dopamine when you get the smile, the text, the look, the thing you've been aching for. Because your nervous system doesn't track logic, it tracks pattern. And that pattern says hurt, 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 ... relief. Repeat. A trauma bond feels like passion. It mimics meant to be, but it's not love, it's a loop, a cycle, a spell. Worst of all, it convinces you that you are somehow chosen, that if they hurt others but come back to you, you're the exception, you're the cure. You start believing, if I love them just right, ... If I stay calm enough, patient enough, silent enough, ... Maybe this time will be different. But real love doesn't make you prove your worth. It doesn't make you audition for affection. It doesn't make you question your memory, your reality, or your right to speak. Real love will never demand your disappearance, mock your boundaries, or punish you for being in pain. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells, it's not love. If you're addicted to their approval, it's not love. If you keep losing pieces of yourself to keep the peace, it's not love. It's a pattern, and you're allowed to break it. You're allowed to want something boring and beautiful, something that doesn't spike your adrenaline, something that feels like rest, not rescue. Step 4. When the world reinforces the wound, society, systems, and shame. You can do everything right. Go to therapy, read every book, learn the red flags, rebuild your self-worth. But then you try to leave or speak out or explain what happened, and the world looks at you like you're the problem. This is the second betrayal, not from the abuser, but from the systems that claim to protect you. People ask, "Why did you stay?" But they rarely ask, "What happened when you tried to leave?" Here's what often happens. You lose housing. You lose custody. You lose credibility. You get labeled as unstable, emotional, dramatic, irrational. Survivors don't stay because they enjoy the pain. They stay because power is structured to protect the person who caused it, especially when the abuser has social status or charm, knows how to manage their image, and stays calm while the survivor looks reactive, because they are reacting. And when the legal system doesn't recognize psychological violence, when the mental health system mislabels trauma symptoms as personality disorders, when religious or cultural spaces reward endurance in silence, the survivor is told again, "You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You're the unstable one." And the abuser walks away looking calm, composed, and even kind. Shame as a system of control. The shame that keeps survivors quiet isn't self-made. It's handed down from families that say, "Don't talk about that. Forgive and forget. Keep the peace." From therapists who analyze your attachment style, but never ask, "Who hurt you?" From workplaces that expect you to show up, smile, and perform, even as your nervous system is collapsing. Shame tells survivors, if you were stronger, you wouldn't be this affected. If you healed correctly, you wouldn't still be hurting. If this was really abuse, you would have left sooner. But this isn't just stigma. It's structural gaslighting. And it's the reason so many survivors stop telling the truth. Not because it didn't happen, but because telling it made everything worse. When someone harms you and the world protects them, you start to think you must be the problem. But that confusion isn't yours. It was planted. And the most radical act of healing is to reject it completely. To say, my trauma doesn't make me unreliable. My pain does not make me weak. My symptoms are not proof that I deserved what happened. And I will not abandon myself just to be believed by a world that rewards predators for their composure. Step 5. What healing actually feels like. Healing isn't what it looks like on Instagram. It's not a glow-up. It's not a polished timeline. It's not a 5-step checklist. And it's definitely not learning to love your abuser. Real healing is not shiny. It's sacred. It's raw. And it's quiet at first. Sometimes it looks like this. Saying no without explaining yourself. Leaving the party early without apologizing. Blocking the number and not checking if they noticed. Mourning someone who has mistreated you and not rushing to feel better. For many survivors, no used to come with consequences. Anger, guilt, abandonment, mockery. So your nervous system still expects punishment for protecting yourself. That's why part of healing is letting your body learn. Nothing bad happens when I set a boundary. You don't have to write a 3-paragraph justification. You don't have to defend your truth. You don't even have to shrink to make it easier for others to accept. No is a complete sentence. And every time you say it without apology, your brain rewires. Each boundary sends a signal to your body. I'm safe now. I won't abandon you again. Mourning the fantasy, not the person. One of the hardest parts of healing is realizing that your grief is real, even when the person was cruel. You're not grieving them. You're grieving the hope that they would change, that this time it would be different, that your love could fix them and fix the parts of you that hurt. Letting go doesn't mean you failed. It means you stopped feeding a story that was starving your soul. And that grief that follows, that's not weakness, that's detox. Feeling safe in peace again. When chaos has been your baseline, peace can feel like emptiness. You might even try to recreate drama just to feel something. That's not self-sabotage, that's dysregulation. Your nervous system was trained to expect danger, to prepare for withdrawal, for the next storm, for the next test. So when someone offers steady love, or when life finally gets quiet, your body doesn't celebrate, it panics. But the longer you stay with the calm, the more your body learns to breathe there, not panic, not freeze, not perform, just exist. And one day, quietly, you'll realize this is what love actually feels like. Not fireworks, not adrenaline, not sacrifice, just steady presence, just breath, just truth. You don't have to be fully healed to be worthy of love. You don't have to be trauma-free to deserve joy. You don't have to fix yourself before you're allowed to rest. Healing isn't about erasing your scars. It's about integrating them. It's knowing your triggers and tending to them without shame. It's holding both your fear and your strength in the same breath. It's saying, I flinched, but I stayed. I doubted, but I didn't disappear. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to be present. Because survival is no longer the goal. Now, the goal is peace, rest, truth, joy, self-belonging, the end. As I sat with the words of this article, I found myself breathing differently. There's a resonance here, an echo of my own journey through dysregulation and the long, winding path toward healing. My personal past includes 2 emotionally damaging relationships, 2 very unalike people who use their skills of manipulation quite differently. But all that Vera shared here is completely relevant to healing the wounds from those relationships. As I read on, that was what moved me the most. This profound sense of permission to simply exist, scars and all. To anyone listening who's lived through emotional abuse, I want you to know I feel you. I know the exhausting vigilance, the way your body waits for that next withdrawal and the next impending storm. I've felt how the quiet, when it finally comes, can be terrifying, how presence itself feels like a test. But what this piece offered me, and what I hope it offers you, is a radical shift. Healing isn't a finish line. It's not about erasing the past or perfecting yourself. It's about integrating every part of you, even the parts that flinch and doubt. For me, permission to heal means letting go of the belief that I need to be fixed. As the article shares, I'm allowed to show up as I am, not as I should be. It's noticing my triggers, not with shame, but with compassion. It's breathing through discomfort and choosing again and again not to disappear. It's allowing myself moments of joy. Practically, here's what's helped me and might help you too. I created a space in my house where I could find time to sit quietly and remind myself that whatever latest incident was bothering me, it had passed, and I was still there. And I played a favorite song that was hopeful or happy. These were tiny signals that told my brain things were going to be okay. Another one was when feelings of anxiety or panic started to become strong, I would kind of give it a label. I feel scared. I feel small. The act of noticing without rushing to change can be a powerful form of acceptance. Most importantly, I allowed myself these brief moments. I considered it self-care, not escape. There wasn't a need to earn the right to give myself that space. I tried to consider it essential rest. And rest is not the prize at the end of healing, it's just part of the healing journey. And to summarize everything that I got from this article, remember that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You don't have to be trauma-free to experience joy. Survival was the old goal, and peace is the new goal. When you allow yourself presence as opposed to performance, you begin to discover a different kind of belonging, one that starts with creating a loving relationship with your own heart and soul. So let's hold space for our messy, beautiful healing. Let's make rest for our revolution, our truth, our companion, and self-belonging, our daily practice. Once again, thank you to Vera Hart for this insightful and helpful article. Now, moving on. Heads up, next week I'll be featuring Mary Jackson's Why I Started Dreading Lunch with My Best Friend. It's a really smart and intriguing essay about how we treat our friends and ourselves along the way. And it includes some practical ways to tackle the things that can be difficult to address when it comes to tending, how can I say this, one-sided friendships. I look forward to sharing more with you. Until next week, take care